Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever Rican's Freaking Top 10. Joining me today is the man, the myth, the legend, the creator of that title for y'all. He's the man to my left, the devilishly good-looking Big Sly TV. What's up, buddy?
Sly TV.
Ah,
Am I right?
I mean,
Am I right?
there are worse things to compare yourself to. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go back to youtube.tv or youtube.com. Wow. Big Sly TV and check out his top 10 and then you can see what I mean.
Hey. Yeah.
But in addition to that YouTube, where else can the people find you at?
Man, I'm Big Sly TV everywhere. Because there's
On
only
Twitch?
one me. On Twitch,
On Twitter,
on Twitter,
on Facebook,
on Facebook,
on Insta,
on Insta,
and right here on YouTube.
and on TikTok and Snapchat and OnlyFans. I'm just playing. We don't do that.
Subscribe for that crispy OnlyFan content. Hey,
I'll take a picture of my pinky toe and send it to you.
I already have enough of those. I need the big toe now.
Oh, okay. That costs extra.
Anyway, speaking of costing extra,
$9.99?
$9.99. Actually, $4.99 now after Peacock bought them. You know that, right?
Really?
Did you hear about? Yeah, the WW Network is now being offered as part of Peacock. So you pay for Peacock and you pay an extra $4.99 to get the WWE Network.
How much is Peacock?
I think it's $7.99. So you might be looking at like $15 for the two services.
Okay.
Yeah,
Peacock's the only place you can stream The Office right now, too.
Big facts. Big facts. Speaking of big facts, call me Big
Sly.
This list that we're going to be going over is more subjective than factually based. I brought Sly along here with me as an appreciative return for him allowing me to heal up his video. So he's going to be the voice of reason behind the voice of delusions list. Because right from the start, Sly, right from the start,
Let me have it.
Number 10 on Rican's top 10 favorite wrestlers. Are you ready for this?
No.
Savio Vega. That's exactly what I was going for.
What?
Savio Vega, top 10 favorite wrestlers. There's favorite. We're not talking about best wrestlers. We're talking about favorite wrestlers.
Who are you leaving off the list?
I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of people off this list. There's a lot of people off this list.
Like Big Diesel, Kevin Nash, he gone.
He's not on the list.
Hulkamania gone. Like you putting Savio Vega on it, everybody's gone.
Listen. Let me tell you a story about Lil Rican. And I'm not talking about my son Lil Rican. I'm talking about me when I was Lil Rican. Wrestling, my first love. There was no one there when I was watching wrestling growing up for me to connect with until Savio Vega came on the scene, Boricua and loud and proud about it. Always will have a place in my heart just for that one reason, because we love our heritage, and I got to show some love to Savio. We talking favorite wrestlers.
We're talking favorite wrestlers. I understand that. I put a large man who probably doesn't belong on most people's top 10, my top 10, because he was I didn't get the name Big Sly for no reason. You know what I'm saying? And he big too. So he doesn't belong on most people's list. Of course, if you watch my list, you know I'm talking about Samoa Joe. So I appreciate the nod to the heritage. It's similar in that way. Not quite the shining star.
It's okay.
I thought you would pick.
It's okay.
If you're going heritage.
Were you thinking somebody else with some big hair? Maybe likes
big hair for sure.
Maybe likes to spit in the face of people who don't like to be cool. Yeah, no, I thought about him. I did think about putting Carlito here, but
can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I don't think most people my age even know who Savio Vega is.
Which listen, you're not that much younger than me. There's a huge amount of overlap in terms of what we were watching.
Oh yeah,
But
yes, no, 100%. But still, I don't think many people.
He was listen. I don't think anyone will ever have Savio Vega in any top 10 list unless you're talking about like top 10 biggest jobbers.
Top 10 Puerto Rican superstars.
Top 10 people I forgot were wrestlers.
Top 10 people most of us didn't know were wrestlers.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So hold on, I'm right. Caribbean Kid, right?
Yeah.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm thinking along the right wavelength. Yeah, top 10.
You guys will see it in the video above
people,
us in that little negative space. I'll try to put like a picture of the great Savio Vega.
Yeah, that'll help all the millennials out for sure.
Yeah, exactly. You Zoomers will know who I'm talking about.
Okay, boomer.
So listen, we're starting with Savio Vega. So we're in for a ride, dude. I'm telling you that right now. We're in for a ride.
We can only go up from here because I don't know if it gets much lower.
You would think that. We'll see. Coming in at number 9. And so
this is Hornswoggle. I quit right now.
Again, we're talking about favorite wrestlers, so everything's subjective. I grew up a kid in the 90s, so the Attitude Era and the impact of moments, right? That was the big thing that always stuck out to me. Is wrestling is just a series of moments that always just stays with me. There is one moment that I will never forget. There's one moment that it was like a cathartic release for a lot of fans. I was there the night after WrestleMania when Dolph Ziggler cashed in his Money in the Bank at the Izod Center, my home state of New Jersey, and the roof blew off that building. As a matter of fact, this might be my first official YouTube video in terms of like talking and shit like that. You can actually go back, and I'll put it in the description below, a link to the video that I did have posted when Dolph Ziggler cashed in and erupted the building. And yeah, I mean, Dolph is somebody who he's worked hard, coming in as Nick Nemeth, Nicky from the Spirit Squad, as you guys may remember him. He's built out his niche. He was Kerwin White's caddy.
He was
married Vicky Guerrero. Is somebody who is perpetually underrated and often overlooked. But man, Dolph Ziggler's that guy, and top 10 for me.
I really want to be the heel right now.
Do it. That's what you're here for.
But I can't disagree with you that Dolph Ziggler is perpetually underrated. I think he's one of the hardest workers in the WWE currently. He shows up day in, day out. He doesn't get the respect he deserves. He constantly gets put on these low end gimmicks or gets strapped with tag teams when he should be at least a mid card solo performer. I think he's a high mid card solo performer if he's only mid card, but I think he at least could be that, constantly competing for IC title, US title, that sort of. So I do think you're right. I think he's heavily overrated or underrated. Sorry. But my question is, if you put HBK 2.0 on the list, are you leaving out HBK 1.0? Because
we'll have to
long blonde hair and a super kick, right? Like
we'll have to find out a little bit later now, won't we?
Yeah. Let's
rolling on number 8.
I can't argue that one though. That's a good solid. I don't know that he belongs in the top 10, but I can't argue him out of the top 10 for a favorite.
Number 8 is another one who for a very long time was overlooked, was somebody who didn't have respect to the higher ups. And then no, not that one. Similar to that one.
Did he come in with a mohawk?
Then he took one of these and he made it into an explosive device one Raw night. When he came out in the middle of a match, sat down cross-legged, And John Cena was writhing in pain after being put through a table. And the voice of the voiceless spoke. And the CM Punk run began. And CM Punk makes the list at number 8.
You know, you're going to make it real. All of these guys I'm looking at going, Vega doesn't belong on a top 10 list.
Listen. I'm telling you right now, Vega does not belong on my top 10 at all.
Vega does not belong on the top 10 list. But because of your reasoning, I can't argue it. That would be like, that would be like me saying, me not putting Troy Aikman, a 3-time Super Bowl winner for the Cowboys, on my top 10 quarterbacks list as a Cowboys fan. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, the Cowboys have so much meaning to me that to not put someone who won the championship 3 times for their team on the top 10 list would be crazy. I completely understand the heritage side of it. And you didn't have anybody who was Puerto Rican to look up to until he came into the business. But he doesn't belong on the top 10.
No. And I admit that there's that personal touch to it.
Ziggler. He is probably the best mid-carder, one of the best mid-carders of all time. I'll give you that. But do mid-carders make top 10 lists?
When we're talking favorite wrestlers?
And then CM Punk. CM freaking Punk. Like, again, he had a couple-year run where he was on fire, top of the game. But outside of that, you're right. He was not very well liked by management. He, was a perpetual mid-carder. And I have to ask, do mid-carders make the top 10 list? But
listen,
they do.
It's
freaking Rican's top 10.
They do. It's what I do. As Mark Henry once said, it's what I do. I kind
of love your top 10 list because it's going to be different than anybody else's.
Your statement, though, right there about, oh, yeah, he had a couple good year run about CM Punk, just completely proves my point about how often overlooked he was. The work that he did outside of the WWE to get brought into OVW, to then get brought up to the WWE and have to deal with those gimmicks that he was given. Right? Let's not forget what he did as the savior or the savior of the straight edge society. Right? Let's not forget what he did in ECW as the ECW champion post WWE purchase.
I agree, but here's my thing. When I look at the straight edge society, I think of one feud. I think of Jericho Punk.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm putting one of them on a top 10 list, it's going to be Jericho.
What about Hardy Punk?
I mean, that was more of just everybody real life with Hardy at the time.
Punk Taker. I mean, he's been in some. Well, that wasn't during Straight Edge Society.
But I'm talking Straight Edge Society only because that was a major part of his run when he was top tier. Was Straight Edge Society, and to be honest, like, it's hard for me to put Hardy into that situation with Straight because I don't think Hardy was in a mental state at that time.
Fair.
To help elevate CM Punk. And I think we talked about it on my list. There has to be the yin and yang, right? Yeah. You have to have somebody that helps push you to the top. Hardy wasn't that guy. Chris Jericho was that guy. But I think if I'm putting either of them on a list, it's Chris Jericho, not Punk.
That's fair.
But I do understand that the list is wrestlers of all time, not WWE wrestlers. And CM Punk had a career before. And
we don't talk about his career post WWE though.
Nobody does. I think CM Punk prefers it that way.
So speaking of yin and yang. These next two wrestlers, we talked about it a little bit on your video, which link down in the description below. Coming in at number 7 and number 6. the Sting and the Undertaker.
Okay.
Number 7 and number 6. And like I said, we talked about it a little.
7.
Sting is 7. Yep. Taker 6. And we talked about it a little bit again in your video. Sting for me, I wasn't a WCW guy growing up. I wasn't.
Yeah,
I was aware. I was aware of it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was then WWF. I was aware of the product and I would watch the product because someone else who unfortunately won't make my list, and I could probably remove Savio Vega and put him in the list, but I'm not going to. But he was a WCW guy. So I was aware of the product. I watched it, but for me, it was all WWE. That's what we talked about in schools. You know, being in Jersey, we're Northeast. That was that was the big New York market, right? That was the WWE.
On, right there.
Yeah.
I want to hit on something right there because I was a WCW guy, and I think you just hit on a huge thing. Sting was very high on my list compared to your list.
Yeah,
but I'm a WCW guy. I was born and raised in Texas. I do think that there are cultural think about where 100%. WCW came out of, the Von Erichs, those were to this day, my dad tells stories about going up and watching the Von Erichs in Dallas and the Freebirds and, you know, all of those things.
And so that, and even though, and again, to the point, even though by the time we're growing up, the territories in their traditional sense were long gone, wrestling was still very, very regional. You know, WCW came out of Jim Crockett Promotions, right? Based out there in Georgia, right? TBS Superstation. When I was growing up, TBS was known for two things: WCW and televising Atlanta Braves games. That's the only thing I knew TBS for. Yeah. So it's very much wrestling, even in the 90s, where the territories were no longer existent, was still very, very regional. And you can tell, like you said, between you and I, right? I was born and raised in Jersey. You were born and raised down here in Texas. Very different, very similar fandoms, very different perspectives on the wrestlers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sting makes the list at number 7 and Taker makes the list at number 6. And like I said, yin and yang, right? Sting, like I said in your video, we're going to forget his WWE run. That's that in 5-10 years, we're going to forget about it. Sting is a WCW guy. Sting was such a WCW guy that he went to TNA instead of going to the WWE. And Sting refused to come to the WWE for 14 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
Right?
It was, something like that.
And so that's Sting. That's your yin right there. Now we talk about the yang. Undertaker, WWE, WWF guy, through and through and through. The leader of the locker room. Will never be associated with WCW. You will never. And he did have a brief run in WCW.
He did.
At the beginning of his career.
He did.
He was Texas Red, Mean Mark Calloway. WWF guy through and through.
And I think to make your point stronger, I do think that yin and yang goes even deeper. I think Undertaker started, getting that candle, that rocket ship, on his back and started. And at that time, Sting steps away from the bright colors, the blonde hair, the surfer, the, bodybuilder, and he gets dark robes. The crow face paint comes out of the rafters. He just sits in the rafters and creepily watches everything. Like, he became the dark, mysterious, ominous figure for the WCW that Taker was for the WWE. So I think your yin and yang goes even deeper than just, they were WCW, WWE guys. And, I think it's a huge thing. I think putting them close together is not a bad thing. They weren't far apart on my list. I think there was only like 2 people between them.
Two,
yeah.
Again, yin and yang. We're going to continue with that. We have Stone Cold at number 5 and The Rock at number 4. Again, child of the 90s, the Attitude Era. That's where it was. WWF fan. You can't have one. We mentioned it. You can't have one without the other. There was no The Rock when he became The Rock without Stone Cold. And you don't have Stone Cold reaching the heights that he did to bring Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, to get involved into the wrestling without The Rock. You just don't have that, right? You don't have that cross appeal without the two of them. So again, another one where I put two together, one after the other. I just favor The Rock a little bit more. I felt like he was overall just a better talker, and for me, I'm all about getting sports entertained.
I think again, regional bias. I think The Rock has more of a foothold, East Coast, Jersey, all that. Stone Cold, he's a Texas boy.
Mm-hmm.
He epitomized the hardworking Southern where I want to buck up against my boss, but I can't. Stone Cold could,
Yeah, agreed.
and I think he hit that for a lot of guys, and that's why I had him switch. But I do think, and I want to ask you the question because I said it earlier on mine. I want to ask you the question.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no Rock, does Stone Cold even make your top 10 list?
If there's no Rock, there's probably not a Stone Cold on my top 10 list. He had a memorable.
No Stone Cold.
But
if there's no Stone Cold, is there a Rock on your top 10 list?
Absolutely not. With Austin, there's a little bit more of an argument because he before he moved on to The Rock, he had that iconic feud with HBK, with D-Generation X, like I mentioned, Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
So he had more of a foundation than The Rock did. The Rock reached the heights that he reached when he became the corporate champion, right? He was booed out of the building as the babyface, blue chipper babyface. And then he became corporate champion. And then he feuded with Mankind and then eventually feuded with Stone Cold, right? So without Stone Cold, I don't think The Rock reaches the heights that he does. I mean, WrestleMania X7, the greatest promo of all time. The My Way promo with The Rock and Austin. Those things don't happen without one or the other.
Yeah, so. I mean, I agree. That's why we talked about it. That's why I put them right next to each other on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I had them a little lower down the list. We're getting awfully close to number one.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of names that haven't made the list.
There's going to be, like I said, there's going to be a number of people who don't make this list.
Oh, yeah. Right. I'm intrigued.
Number 3. It's the same number 3 that you had. Latino Heat, Eddie Guerrero makes the list at number 3 for me. Now, I talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about moments and things that stick with you going forward. Eddie brought that passion to the sport. Eddie brought that charisma, that love for professional wrestling that I don't think very many people honestly have. Coming from a family of wrestlers. But just how he made everything into such a beautiful moment. Everything. His interactions with China when he was Latino Heat with the mullet. First of all, best mullet in the business. There's tons of mullets.
Hands down.
Best mullet in the business, all right? His underdog story, his ascension to superstardom in WrestleMania 20 just hit different. Yeah, it's a little tainted now all these years later with other stuff surrounding it, but there was that moment where he reached the top and it was like he brought the fans with him. I remember Eddie as being one of the first people, like a Daniel Bryan, where the fans fully embraced and he rode that wave of love from the audience and from the crowd to the top. You know, and we saw that, like I said, with Daniel Bryan later on here in recent years. But I mean, there was just something magical about Eddie that you know, when he passed, I mean, it hit me. It hit me. And again, it goes back to my Hispanic heritage. You know, yeah, we have a pretty rich history in lucha libre, but we never had that guy, right? We never had the guy in the business. And Eddie, during that era, the SmackDown 6, during that era as world champion, he was the man in wrestling. You couldn't go anywhere without a little Latino heat around you.
Yeah, and, I mean, you said it's because your hair, and there's definitely something there, but I think Eddie transcended.
Oh
Eddie
no, he didn't.
Wasn't Eddie didn't affect Hispanic people because he was Hispanic. Eddie affected everybody because he was that guy.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember them coming out on the stage and, announcing Eddie had passed and bawling. And years later, they did a special, not over Eddie Guerrero, over somebody else on Dark Side of the Ring.
Mhm.
And they talked about Eddie passing
And how it affected that person.
Chavo Guerrero talked about how he held Eddie in his arm. And as a 29, 30-year-old man, I found myself bawling again over the passing of Eddie Guerrero. And I mean, how long ago was that now?
2003?
3, 4? Yeah.
WrestleMania 20.
Years ago.
6 months after that, I think.
Yeah, years ago. And I found myself as a grown man bawling again because Eddie had that kind of draw to him.
Yeah, no, it wasn't to discredit, like,
and I don't think
it just kind of magnified it more for me is all.
I do think that is a huge thing. I mean, I think that when you can look up to somebody for more than just they're a great athlete, that there's a deeper connection. So for you, I mean, we said it even all the way up to the top of your list. Vega was huge for you, while nobody else, would put Vega on a list. Vega was huge for you because that's the first time you saw someone like you in the wrestling ring.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Samoa Joe was big for me because he wasn't Vader big. He wasn't,
Bam Bam.
Who else would? He wasn't Bam Bam big. He wasn't that guy who, you felt like they were being very gimmicky with his weight and like the Vader bomb, we're going to use your weight as like a weapon because you're just that big. Samoa Joe was a big guy, but he could move. He was athletic. And I understand Vader and Bam Bam were that before I was able to start watching them. But Samoa Joe was the first time that I got to see and go, this guy's like me. Like, I'm a big guy that's athletic and can move and can do some stuff that I shouldn't be able to. And this guy's like me. Right. So I 100%. And me saying, Eddie was beyond just the cultural appreciation doesn't mean that the cultural appreciation doesn't magnify it even more. I'm just saying, like, he was that character that
he transcended
everybody cried. He transcended any kind of barrier you could put on him.
Yeah. Number 2. We share number 2 as well.
Oh, really?
Yes. Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
And what he did to revolutionize, because that's what he did. Let's say what it is. He revolutionized the industry. He was that catalyst for change when he lost his smile and came back. Right? What he did in forming D-Generation X, what he did in a lot of the things that he did in terms of exposing, for lack of a better word, the backstage aspect of WWE with the Clique and the influence that they had in the industry that we're still feeling today. I mean, you just can't, you can't diminish that at all, right? And that's not even to start talking about his prowess in the ring and his attention to detail to his craft. I mean, there was, him and Hitman, right? There was always the back and forth about, well, Shawn Michaels doesn't take this seriously. Shawn Michaels this, Shawn Michaels that. I mean, it just years later, and everybody kind of knows, my feelings on Hitman and how I feel he's a little bit of a fraud. But Michaels was always up there from a technical aspect, from a showmanship aspect. He didn't have a peer. He didn't have a peer in that time, And then you take into the backstage politics that he introduced, that he brought out to the forefront, the curtain call incident of Madison Square Garden, the fact that instead of shitting on Diesel and Razor Ramon when they went to WCW, he looked at it as, wow, man, I have influence over 2 different companies right now because the 2 people who are at the top of the card over in WCW are my 2 best friends.
Yeah.
And the Clique was literally running the industry in the 90s. And who was the head of the Clique? Shawn Michaels.
Are they not still running?
I would argue they're still running it. They still are.
I mean, where has Triple H found himself?
No, you're right.
Shawn
You're right.
Michaels isn't Shawn Michaels now coaching
In the PC.
and yeah, like
Yeah.
I very much think that there's still so your number one is the counterpart to that, right? Bret Hart?
My number one is somebody that was mentioned just now, and you already know who it is, Chico. It's the bad guy himself. There was nobody else that was going to be number one. There was nobody else that was going to be number one. It's the bad guy. It's Razor Ramon. It's Scott Hall.
Yo.
Hey, yo. Listen. For me, Razor Ramon was the epitome of cool. Right? He was cool personified, especially in the mid 90s. He had the hair, he had the bod, the chiseled chest, the just the smile, he oozed machismo, to use his word. He was the man. He was the man. And again, I was a little bit more marky back then. Obviously, I was a kid, right? We talked a lot about my heritage and how it plays into who I found, found myself being a fan of more and more. I mean, back then I didn't know kayfabe. I didn't know who Scout Hall was, but I knew Razor Ramon was kind of like Scarface, and Scarface was my jam, dude. Like that's So that's what initially brought me. But to also be able to back that up in the ring. I mean, this man was 6'7". This man could grapple with the best of them, could deliver on the mic, and then going to WCW, he brought me with him. I'll tell you that much. I became more aware of the product after that. And then seeing the struggles that he went through out of the ring, and seeing him come back from all those, all the travesty and all the tragedy in his life, where honestly, let's be real, we never thought, at least I'll speak for myself, I never thought I'd actually see him get inducted while he was still alive into the WWE Hall of Fame.
I didn't either.
I didn't think that was a thing. I honestly thought he was going to be another story. Go ahead.
Again, I think that's in part due to the fact that the Clique is still in charge.
Yeah. I mean, even though it was DDP who reached out to him and brought him on board, and I can go on and on about DDP. He's another one. He's one of my honorable mentions.
Yeah, he would have to be one of mine too.
Yeah.
So 2 things. First thing, Razor Ramon didn't make my list.
He did not.
But he is part of my second favorite tag team of all time.
Is it the Outsiders?
Yeah. Because Big Sexy Kevin Nash. Like, yeah. Diesel, he was Razor Ramon for me.
Yeah.
Razor Ramon was always cool, but Diesel was the one that I was like, dude he's got the hair. He's a giant among men. Like, he's called Big Sexy. Like, he has to be one of the coolest people ever.
Yeah.
And then Razor Ramon just added to it. So he is one of my that is my second favorite tag team of all time, which, New Age Outlaws.
Yeah.
That's my first. So they kind of go hand in hand.
They do.
With the idea.
Again, it's the Clique.
The other thing that I noticed, you didn't put a single tag team.
I didn't. I wasn't a tag team guy growing up. I was very much more about the singles, the one-on-one competition. I mean, if I was gonna put a tag team in there, I would reach to the Von Erichs. I would reach towards the Freebirds. These are people who wrestled before my time, but I like to consider myself a little bit of a historian of wrestling. I'm definitely much more in tune with the older product than anything new nowadays. We could throw, honestly, I'd probably throw the Rock and Sock Connection in there as well. It's one of the better tag teams. The Brothers of Destructions would be on that list as well. But I mean, I could make a top 10 just all tag teams. We could talk about that for a later date.
We could. I think we'll have to do that.
I want to throw a couple of other names out there, just honorable mentions for me, real quick. Okay. That I didn't get a chance to get to. Bam Bam Bigelow and DDP. Bam Bam was the big dude in the day, but he was over here doing moonsaults and jumping off the top rope, being all crazy. He was fast as hell for a man that size, and I've always been a big kid. You talked about it a little bit with Samoa Joe. Same connection there. And a Jersey boy. DDP Asbury Park, New Jersey, same thing, man. He had the diamond, you know, his diamond hand sign, the cutter, like, I mean, and then just the work that he did to revitalize and get some of these legends back up and running.
I mean,
Jake the Snake, you know. But
I was just gonna say, Razor Ramon, you know, his life was turned around because of DDP. Chris Jericho says he would have been forced into retirement years ago if it weren't for DDP yoga. Like, DDP has proven to not just be, you know, a great in-ring competitor, great in-ring personality, but to just be a great person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, honorable mention has to go
and
there.
Then the last one for me, and it's really, honestly, this goes back to including Savio Vega on the list and missing out some names. Macho Man not being on my list.
Yeah.
You know, there's one of the best of all time, in all honesty, and it's just, you know, he is one of my favorites, but you know, we're talking top 10, and I mean, he deserves a place on the list. It's just a little, just probably number 11 there.
I agree. Macho Man Jay Lethal was a great wrestler.
We're not talking about Jay Lethal. Although Jay Lethal may be like the best Macho Man cosplayer of all time, in my opinion.
He's up there.
Yeah, but yeah, that I think that about wraps it up for this this episode of Top 10. Like I said, we'll have a link to Sly's down there. But Sly, if you want to go ahead and let everybody know once again where we can all find you at.
Yeah, I'm Big Sly TV, just about everywhere. If you're a wrestling fan, you enjoy conversations like this, come by Twitch sometime and let's just have a conversation. Let's talk about things we love.
If you're a good person and you like conversations like this, definitely go over just go over to have conversations. It's what Sly does best. But in the meantime, in the between time, you guys take care of yourselves. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.